People who were fine 1 minute, then woke up in the hospital. What happened? My dad was driving me to school and suddenly I was in my bed. I get up, open my door, and ask my family what just happened. They all simultaneously scream for me to go back to the bed. Apparently I had already asked them what happened 6 separate times. I had a series of grand mal seizures during the car ride. Went from chatty to seizing all of a sudden. My dad called our pediatrician and I was eventually diagnosed with a form of epilepsy. My dad was told to take me home and put me to bed. It was the most disorienting thing I've ever experienced. It took 6 months to feel normal again. I had a constant sense of newness with familiar things that was very weird. Edit. Fixed autocorrect errors. When I was around 8 or 9, my parents went to have dinner at a fancy restaurant. My younger brother was at a friend's house and I had a babysitter. When I finally fell asleep I woke up in an ambulance. Turns out my babysitter overdosed me with pills so I wouldn't wake up whilst she threw a party at my house. She gave me so many I passed out and had a reaction. I was in elementary school. I stayed home because I had a light fever one day. I took a nap and woke up 3 days later in the hospital with no feeling in my legs. I had contracted viral meningitis, which had cut off the nerves to my lower body. I was bedridden for 3 weeks and spent several more weeks in physical therapy relearning how to walk. The horrors I endured during my stay were traumatic enough. But I still feel lucky. In high school, a fellow classmate had contracted bacterial meningitis. He died 2 days later. On a business trip in Texas, me and 2 coworkers were driving to work. I was in the back passenger seat. Woke up in an ambulance. Got hit by a Sprinter van at 50 miles per hour and slammed into a guardrail according to the police report. I don't remember any of it. Broke 7 ribs, collarbone, concussion, and fractured 2 bones in my neck. Took like 7 months to recover. But my neck and shoulder still bother me daily. I had a severe asthma attack to the point my entire throat closed up. I turned blue and was lying on the kitchen floor. Woke up in my granddad's car with a straw in my throat and him banging on my back. Woke up again in the hospital. I was about 7. I don't know if absolutely plastered counts as being fine 1 minute. But yeah, I remember being shit-faced sitting on a jungle gym in a park and then waking up the next morning in the hospital with an IV and catheter. Apparently I was found in a coma and had multiple organs shutting down. If I hadn't received medical help I would have died. Am now 3 years sober. My girlfriend had a thyroid-related heart attack, where she was revived and put into a medically induced coma for like 2 weeks. And took her another 2 weeks to come out of it. Then she had to go to inpatient physical therapy for a bit. Talking to her after she woke up, I couldn't help but be astounded how much it fucked with her memory. It was like she remembered events, people, things and places, but any concept of time went out the window. For example, she thought she was living at her ex-husband's mom's house, driving a car she had before we met, working at her current job, and knew we were dating. And of course, as those were all simultaneously impossible, she was having a lot of trouble figuring out what was right and what wasn't. Was on the way to work on my bike. Last thing I remember is turning out of the driveway. Woke up 5 days later in a neuro-trauma unit with 11 broken ribs, a shattered clavicle, a punctured lung, 8 stitches on my foot, 6 behind my ear, and permanent nerve damage. I have no recollection to this day of what happened. From the evidence, I'm pretty sure I was run over. There was also blood on my helmet visor from the wound behind the ear. I've had some parts filled in for me. The first hospital they took me to couldn't give me strong painkillers and risk putting me under because they didn't know what damage my skull had taken. Court scans were required. Took 4 hours for me to get to a hospital with a CT machine. 4 hours with a punctured lung. There's no video of the incident. It happened conveniently in an unsurveilled spot between 2 video cameras. Bystanders were of no help, at least. My brother and dad didn't collect any information from them that they've shared with me. I suspected for some time that my then-girlfriend with whom I'd recently broken up had tried to have me taken out. While I was under, she turned up at the hospital and convinced my family that I'd tried to kill myself. In a bike accident. While wearing a helmet. In 6 p.m. rush hour traffic. Half a mile from my apartment. Where my dad was sitting. On the 10th floor. My brother and my dad believe her. They still think I remember exactly what happened but won't tell them because I'm embarrassed to admit I was suicidal. The real irony? I never had suicidal thoughts until after I recovered and realized my own family chooses to believe an outsider over me. They still do. This is what betrayal is. Took years to move past those thoughts. Ironically similar to another comment, I was also riding my bicycle to work when I got hit by a drunk driver going 45 miles per hour head-on. I would have been going about 20 miles per hour myself. I have no memory of being hit. I had a lot of injuries being such a traumatic impact. Avulsion fracture to tibia. Bruised lung. Moderate brain injury. Grade 4/5 lacerated spleen, almost fatal. Broken left femur. 2 vertebrae with compression fractures. Broken left scapula. Broken left clavicle. Broken left second rib. And various scrapes. The worst being 6 by 1.5 x 1 inch. I've mostly recovered. But my left leg can't be walked on really. My left arm will never be what it was. The worst scrape was on top of the shoulder, so that muscle is just gone. She was drunk. Speeding and the wrong side of the road. She tried claiming my lights were off. But they were still on at the scene. I don't know how I managed to survive. It was a collision of a total of 65 miles per hour. I wasn't even supposed to work that day either. Now the pain, my heavens, does that hurt. The first vivid memory I have was when they set my femur into place, out in traction. Without any kind of pain meds. I had lost so much blood I couldn't handle any painkillers at all. After that, once adrenaline wore off, the pain was excruciating. It felt like I was breaking a new bone with every breath with all the injuries I had. The pharmacy had some issue and I only got an opioid twice in line 4 or 5 hours. They only worked for like 20 to 30 minutes. Never really complained about it. No point. It is what it is. The driver complained about more the first 10 minutes than I have in 10 months. Cussing and screaming at me while I was laying there dying. I was at work having a normal day. I went to the toilet and could not get off the floor because I was doubled over in pain. I somehow managed to stagger out to where my colleagues were and they called me an ambulance. Got to hospital and had all my clothes and belongings shoved in a bag and was rushed into emergency surgery for a ruptured ectopic pregnancy. I had a friend over for a puppy playdate and I remember looking at the clock and thinking I needed to pack for a road trip because we were going to visit my fiancé family. The next second I was being told to hold very still and I was having some sort of scan done. That nurse was amazing because she managed to keep me calm the whole time. We were at a stoplight and rear-ended by a distracted driver. I completely lost 14 hours. I cannot remember them at all, just a complete black hole. The worst memory loss is that I have very foggy memories from about 2 months before the accident. It feels like you are trying to remember a dream. Like you know something happened. But have no concrete memories. This time period includes my fiancé proposing to me and I hate so much that I cannot remember it. Finally, the entire school year before that. I am a teacher, seems like a really long time ago. Like if I try really hard I can have concrete memories. But it is like trying to remember a birthday party from 20 years ago. Everything before that is still fine and present. That was 4 years ago and I still struggle with my memory. Watching the dashcam footage is surreal because I know that is me. And I was awake and talking. But no matter how hard I try I cannot remember it. Please, please, please do not text and drive. It is not worth the risk. The young man that hit us made a simple decision that completely changed my life and I will probably struggle for the rest of my life because he was looking at his phone. Edit to add some humorous details. I was having Groundhog Day every minute or so and I would generally ask the same questions in the same order. Obviously I would ask what happened, then how did I get here? My fiancé and the nurses would make up new answers every time. Apparently the one that got the biggest reaction is that I got there by a rocket ship. Haha. Small bowel obstruction. My neighbor saved me. I went to bed perfectly fine. Then apparently I was puking blood and we had massive gaps under our front doors. Like you could stick your hand under it, and they were all studio apartments. My neighbor walked by my unit walking into hers and said she heard me gurgling and she was pounding on the door and I wasn't responding. She kicked it in, brought me to the hospital, downtown. 2 blocks away, and I woke up 2 weeks later. Nothing obvious caused it and I lost 110 pounds in 2 weeks. This happened 4 years ago. I've gained about 50 pounds back. But today I am healthy and no longer wake up in fear. It is extremely overwhelming to go to bed, ready to wake up for class the next day, and instead wake up 2 weeks later, having lost over half of your body weight. I think it's fair to say it's a little traumatizing to wake up in an ICU. I was walking to a birthday party. Next thing I knew, I woke up in an ambulance. I had been struck over the head and was knocked unconscious. I never found out who it was, or what they wanted. They didn't take anything from me. My mom, my brother, and I were in the family room chatting. I was maybe 8 at the time. My brother 13. My mom asked us if we'd like some of the Danish chocolate the exchange student we hosted for a few weeks gave us as a parting gift. Excited, I raced to the kitchen to beat my brother there. I tripped over a stool someone left out, let's be honest. Probably me. I fell over it and hit my head on the edge of the kitchen counter. From there I blacked out. Now, this wasn't my first head injury and certainly not my last. So I barely recall waking up at the hospital. I remember my body feeling extremely heavy and my head pounding like nothing ever before or since. Apparently I scrambled my memories up even more than one of my first head injuries. 14 stitches to sew me back up and one sort of boring summer inside with the TV. Never did get that chocolate. Edit. A word. 1 month short of my 14th birthday I was riding my bicycle home from school. 1 second I was at the top of a steep hill, and on the wrong side of the road. The next second I was standing in the middle of the street. I reasoned I must have fallen off of my bike. It was lying nearby, so I picked it up and tried to get back on. For some reason the pedals wouldn't move. At this time a bunch of people had come up to me, and they were all freaking out. I was confused at first as to why I was surrounded by hysterical adults until I happened to look down. That was when I finally noticed all of the blood pouring out of my face. So I let them guide me off of the street while an ambulance was called for me. I spent the while ambulance ride asking if I was going to get a shot. The EMTs kept giving me evasive answers, so I kept asking. I still don't remember what happened. But here's what I've pieced together over the years. While riding on the wrong side of the road I passed in front of a stopped car. The driver wanted to turn right, so she was looking to her left to spot a gap in traffic. When she saw one she pulled out, not realizing I was approaching from her right. She barely knocked me off of my bicycle, but I was going over 20 miles per hour because of the hill I just went down. I hit the asphalt face first with no helmet. The skin on the left side of my forehead was completely torn off and had to be regrown. Was taking the bus home from my mom's place. I asked the bus driver to stop at the house, as it was just next to the road and I forgot a thing. I ran across the road. Got hit by a car. They found me in a decorticate posturing. A few days, 8, in medically induced coma. I was constantly spitting at the breathing tube, attempting to spit it out. Didn't appreciate that thing in my throat. I had a weird dream of a snake that had attached, bitten me in the mouth. At some point I got tired of the situation. I fought the snake. I eventually won and tore the snake away from my mouth, removing my own breathing tube. I looked at it, dancing, in my hand and I threw it across the room to kill it. My family got all the diagnosis possible. Permanent brain damage. Unable to decide which side I wished to drool on. Forever living in a wheelchair. About 20 days after the accident I went home and bicycled a trip. Left the hospital after 28 days. During the entire venture I was flying high on morphine. During my detox routine, I told the nurses I had a weird experience with a photograph on the wall. It was flowing in, out, having waves as an ocean. A 2D image became 3D. And doing other trippy things. Today, I'm living with a 10% disability condition. Cost me my dream of software development. I was watching Pocahontas in a blanket fort with my stuffed animals. Home from preschool because I had pink eye. The next thing I knew, over a week had passed. I was surrounded by doctors, who were begging me to open up my mouth. My jaw was locked shut. And I had bacterial meningitis. My parents were there, weeping. And my dad told me if I opened my mouth for the doctors he would buy me a Barbie Jeep. I tried. It was impossible. Days later, I tried again. And part of my tongue fell out. I had bit it off during a seizure. Everyone was yelling. And I looked at my dad and said, "Where's my Barbie Jeep?" I have almost no memories from the time of my life. But the promise my dad made me was on my mind in every memory I have. My parents were told I would never be 100% again and I would likely have severe brain damage permanently. It was excruciatingly painful to move and do things for a while. But my dad kept reminding me that I could drive my Jeep if I kept it. I remember watching him put it together. But I wasn't strong enough to drive it. My personality was gone. But I just didn't care. I barely spoke for months. And had to learn how to read, write, draw again. Fast forward. I finished high school early and I have zero health issues now. I genuinely believe my parents are to thank. The brain can heal really well. But they found a way to motivate me to keep healing constantly. Was at the beach and went for a swim. I was 8 at the time. Next thing I know I'm on a hospital bed with my mom and aunt watching over me. Turns out some asshat thought it'd be fun to throw me into the water. Apparently the impact knocked the wind out of me and I almost drowned if it weren't for some other dude seeing me not move. The asshat tried to run away but was arrested. His family tried to pay off my mom so she wouldn't press charges, but that kinda becomes moot when police wants your ass. My other relatives though tried to paint me ass pussy who was too much of a pussy to learn how to swim. But my other relatives got my back, telling them if they'd be any better if they were knocked out and thrown overboard. Normal 1 minute. In the hospital the next with an oxygen mask strapped to my face. Asthma is a bitch. Edit. Thanks for the upvotes laughing face. COVID pneumonia. Woke up. Took a piss. Eyesight started going black. Lost all vision. Then slowly lost all hearing. Woke up to 10L oxygen in a hospital and was there through Christmas and New Year's. Was not fun at all. Had very low lung capacity for 5 months of lung rehabilitation. My little sister went into DKA, diabetic ketoacidosis, a long time ago now. And in her description it was like blink sleep. Like when you go to bed and feel like you've only just blinked and woken up hours later. Except in this case, she fell asleep at home and woke up a week later in the hospital. Hit by a van. Woke up about a month later. Edit. My last memory before waking up is my 4th period art class in high school. So it completely erased the last half of the day before and the entire morning of the accident itself. I had just finished 2-a-day high school football practice in 100-degree+ heat. Because our health and safety didn't matter. Only winning. So I got home and my friend asks if I want to smoke a little weed with him. I shower. Pour a Gatorade in a huge cup of ice and feel refreshed. Took 2 hits off the blunt and a big chug of my ice-cold Gatorade and only remember waking up in a pool of my own sweat on a hospital bed. I had a heat stroke. Even more than an hour after I stopped practice and took a cool shower. The nurse said I may have sent my body into shock if my core temperature was still high, and I took a large gulp of the extremely cold Gatorade. I hadn't eaten for days since I was so busy. For some odd reason I felt fine. I didn't feel drained of power or hungry, so it didn't cross my mind to at least take a tube of Pringles with me or a bottle of water. Was playing tennis with a friend and then everything went black. I had collapsed and woke up in a hospital. I got something to eat and I was fine afterwards. Never starve yourselves, guys. Someone tossed a rake like a javelin at my face. It impacted right between my eyes and knocked me out cold. I was maybe 16? I had asked my mom if we could go look at puppies at a pet store. 'Cause man do I love dogs. There were a lot of really cute dogs. But after being inside for a minute, I felt off. Not like something is extremely wrong. Just sorta off. At this point I figured I was having an asthma attack. And since my rescue inhaler was in the car, went to go sit down and use it. My mom came out a minute later and started driving me to the hospital. BC my breathing wasn't getting better. Woke up 3 days later in a hospital bed. With my mom and dad sobbing next to me. Apparently I had a severe allergic reaction. My throat had closed almost completely. The doctor that appeared soon after me waking said that I was extremely lucky. And gave me an EpiPen. Still don't know what I was allergic to. 'Cause even with insurance, getting allergy tested was way too expensive. Still is kinda too expensive. Still crawling out of medical debt now. This was about 2 summers ago. My family has a total of 4 horses. Only 3 we can ride. Our biggest and oldest horse, Hope, is an ex-racehorse. For some time I had been taking lessons on her from my stepmom. Hope was not fully trained and could only be ridden at a walk, trot. She also couldn't steer. Horses don't like wind and it was really windy that day, leaving Hope a bit sensitive. When trying to get her into a trot, my stepmom had a whip and was just shaking it slightly. Hope jumped forward, so I instinctively held on with my legs. Bad idea. This caused her to freak out more. I was pulling back on the reins to try and get her to stop. When she finally came to a very harsh stop, I went off backwards. Not sure how, but I did. Landed right on my head. Hope proceeded to back up and step on my back. I got a concussion. That was it. I could have easily been paralyzed or even killed. I don't remember seeing anything in the hospital, but I remember hearing things. The earliest thing I remember seeing was the window at a Walgreens pharmacy. Also, I don't remember most of that day. This is just from what my stepmom told me. I braided my horse's tail. Faith. Earlier that day and had no memory. I even remember in the hospital bed my stepmom telling me I did it. I didn't know what day it was or anything. Over time some memory came back from it. Like I remember crawling out of the pen while gasping for air. Hope is a sweet horse. I should have been more careful that day. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to drop a like. If you would like to see more content like this in the future, subscribe and turn on notifications to be notified about future videos. Now check out one of these interesting videos.